Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive Positive Recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of Positive Recovery MD with your hosts, Dr. Jason Powers and Julie DeNova.
Hey, hey.
So at Positive Recovery MD podcast, our mission is to do two things: to provide hope and to give you guys a tool or a set of tools to help you flourish. And with that said, we have awesome guests, as you could tell. We have also the PERMA section where we go over a positive intervention, and we're going to introduce a new section, which Julie came up with, which we'll be talking about strength, and we'll be highlighting a strength for the next several months. Then we'll move on to another topic in either positive psychology or addiction or just well-being in general. So our next guest is well known to Julie and I, and we arm wrestled over who got to do the introduction, and Julie won. So Julie's going to do the, hey, this is who you are professionally. And Ilana, I want you to think about your positive introduction, because we're going to hit you with that first. So Julie, why don't you take over?
Right. And just 1 second before I do the professional introduction, for those of you who might be wondering, what is a positive introduction? I just want to really quick tell you guys that we use positive introductions at our treatment center in a way to help people introduce themselves who they are at their best, rather than just starting out every group or introduction with, hi, my name is Julie and I'm an alcoholic, or hi, my name is Fred and I'm, an addict. It's just a really nice way to get to know people a little bit differently. Because somebody was asking me about that the other day. Why is it that people in group at your center don't say who they are and identify themselves as to what substance they are? And I said, because there's so much more. And it just makes me happy to know that we make that part of who we are. So Ilana Zivkovich and I have known each other for quite a few years now, and she is the founder and CEO of Werq, which is an executive and team performance coaching firm headquartered in Austin, Texas. She has also received her master's in social work from the University of Texas at Austin. So I know we should be throwing up some signs, and there you go, the Longhorn signs. And she is a certified executive coach and really builds teams where collaboration, or helps people build teams where collaboration, innovation, and achievement are really the end result. And I've had the opportunity to work with Ilana in many different ways. And one of the things that I have always absolutely loved, and I'm sure many of you will learn about today, is how she always chose uncomfortable bravery over comfortable avoidance. Always. And I love that about her. It was always great. She was an amazing leader for the times that I got to work with her. And I can't wait for you to learn and know a little bit more about Ilana today.
And on a deeper level, what I love about her is that she is like a GPS system. She goes somewhere once. And I mean, that's the really deep part of her. And also she's really good with words. So don't play her in Scrabble, because you'll lose.
Goodness. Thank you both. What a pleasure.
I've known Ilana also for a long time. In fact, that little daily guide, she helped me co-write. It was already set in stone. So her name's not on the cover, but she knows it very intimately. And, we joke, she's a sister of another mother. I got a great story to tell, which also I think has to do with what you do at Werq. I used to be in entrepreneurs organization, and my little pod called a forum hired her to moderate us. And she did a great job. I mean, it was phenomenal. She helped us see that we don't ask for help and all these other things. And then one of the mornings we had some free time, and I don't know how she talked me into going to the beach. She asked to go out and explore and do everything. And I joke, she's like a lab, right? It's like, hello, hello, how are you? She's like, and I just want to like be inside and, be on my iPad or whatever. But somehow she and I and Madhu and Josh like went to the beach and we climbed on this rock, which was high above the water and had a great view. And like all of a sudden out of nowhere, this huge tsunami came and knocked the shit out of us. Like we're lucky to be alive, but we were, wow, what the hell happened? I mean, just out of nowhere, it was seriously like 60-foot high wave where we were on this rock. And I'll always remember that. So like this near-death experience I had that weekend because of you. Thank you.
Happy to provide an additional reason to be grateful in your life, for not dying on the rock. And I will tell your listeners, Dr. Powers does not embellish that much. It might not have been 60 feet, but it was high enough to completely soak us. And we were on at least like a 15-foot rock. It was pretty crazy out of the blue.
I would trust your height judgment over mine. I really have no idea. I'm short. I'm 5'6", maybe. So it could have been 10 feet. But in any case, why don't you let us know who you are by telling us you at your best?
Okay, I would love to. Thank you guys so much. I'm sitting here blushing. So thank you. It's so great to be here with you. So who I am at my best, I'm cheating because we did this intervention, Dr. Powers and I, 6-7, a lot of years ago now, and I'm going to use the exact same story, so I don't have to recreate it. But it's a special story of me at my best. And the reason it's special to me is because if you ask my husband, when he knew that he wanted to marry me, he would say it was when this thing happened. And this thing was, we were going to a concert in the evening in Austin, where we live, at a downtown venue. We were walking up the street and there was a woman who, to me, as someone who's clinically trained, was clearly in either some form of psychosis or uncomfortable drug-induced situation. Like something was she was off, something was not right with her. And she was kind of in the gutter near her car. She was yelling and crying and just a mess, just a mess. And there were a couple different pods of people that were standing sort of as far back on the sidewalk as you can possibly get away from this struggling human, kind of talking and pointing and that kind of thing. And we are walking up the street. I can bank this in my clinical training, but I actually will bank it in my strengths. My signature strengths in order are love, curiosity, and creativity, and courage isn't too far down there. My just instinctual response was I went to her. I crouched down, I spoke softly, I helped de-escalate, and I said, hey, my name's Ilana, I'm here, I'd love to help you. Tell me your name. Can you tell me what you're feeling right now? What's going on? And, long story short, helped her out of that situation. I ended up finding her friends. It helped her get to somewhere safe. And my husband, who comes from a very different background than me, and probably, God love him, would have been on the sidewalk going, I want to help, but I don't know what to do. He just kind of looks at that and goes, whoa, like, is this woman a Jedi? Like, how did she do that? And to me, it was very instinctual. So I think of that as me at my best because it shows those signature strengths that I mentioned, love and curiosity and creativity, but really like being, to Julie's point earlier, someone who is willing to be uncomfortable and do the right thing. And for me, the right thing is a lot about honoring people for who they are and helping them if they're in a tough spot, or helping them see that they can get out of that tough spot in some way and not being afraid to be a little uncomfortable to go be a part of that. So that would be me at my best.
That's awesome. If memory serves, wasn't it also like raining?
It was raining. It was dark. It was gritty. It was dirty. I was dirty at the end. It was, you got down in the wet muck, like on the street. There's like a million reasons to just pass this person by, right? Like she was poor. She was crazy. It was raining. Like she's out of her mind. And, a lot of people would probably not have done that. Like not even close. Maybe had the feeling that Zach had, but I love that. That is intuitive of you. That is, those are your character strengths in action. And I think our listeners really get to know Ilana, Julie, more from that than saying, what she does at work and everything. And that's like what's that for? Okay. That's about what I do. We're like, we all have a resume that says something, but who
exactly.
are yeah,
exactly. And so for those of you listening that aren't watching the video, she was kind of mouthing with her hand, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't, right? It's like kind of like how much do you make? What income bracket are you in? What do you do? Now, you've got an amazing company and you're doing amazing. And even from a young age, you were like the youngest person to be executive director and then whatever director. Like, I don't know. Those things don't matter to me either. But this is a section where I kind of like to tease out how you can be an exemplar of hope for others. So if you would you give a little bit of your story? You're in recovery. So I know a lot of us are who listen. Hit us up with what it was like, what happened, what's it like now?
Yeah, sure. And I think to frame it in a way that makes the most sense for this conversation, I am in recovery. I am one of those blessedly fortunate people. I've worked really hard and I've had a lot of support and a lot of good fortune come my way. I got sober at 16 and stayed that way, at least to this date, which is pretty rare statistically and something I'm extremely grateful for. But when you ask about like what has caused career success, I can't separate it from recovery because it's the things that I learned, most of which the hard way through the journey of like falling so hard, so young, flat on my face, really ugly stuff that goes on that prompts us to get into recovery in the first place, that then prompted me to move into recovery. The same skills that I use to be a recovering person are the skills that allow me to be successful professionally. And for me, that's a lot about being really willing to make a lot of mistakes and to try things that are really hard and trust that either A, I'm going to figure out and have the support and ask enough questions to be successful, or B, if I'm not, quote, successful at accomplishing whatever the task or the goal is, that I'm sure going to learn a bunch from it. And, the feedback around me will tell me that I'm no longer invited to do whatever that hard thing is, but I'll learn from that experience. And so it's almost like professionally speaking for me, there's no such thing as failure. Because when there is failure, in quotation marks for those that aren't watching, when there is failure, it just means that I tried something really hard, very growth mindset oriented, I suppose, that I tried something really hard and that I learned something from it and grew. I'm totally okay to make mistakes. I'm not okay to not learn from them. That's how I kind of talk to myself and to my child and, my team and all that. So I know that's a little bit broad. It's not the stuff on the resume. You can read that. It's online in different places, but it's really been that willingness to say yes to a challenge and ask for a lot of help and work with people like both of you, Julie and Jason, who can teach me a lot of things that I don't know, and then try again after I fall flat on my face.
You said something when you were executive director of Promises Austin. You were like, you know what? I would rather work outside of the box and get my hand slapped and be told that no, otherwise I don't know sort of where the limits are. And it wasn't a rebellious thing. Mm-hmm. It really was an extension of like, okay, well, what can we do to help others? And like, you just don't see boundaries, which is awesome. You don't see limits. It made you probably a really difficult patient because I know you and I know the stories on how sort of contrarian you were, but it really wasn't a rebellion for rebellion's sake, even though you were young. It really is, you're an independent thinker. And I don't think we give ourselves permission to make those mistakes. And you were awesome. And can I brag on Julie? Because, at Positive Recovery Center right now, she runs everything. And for a while, I'm sure it was the same thing starting Werq, your company. It wasn't the same degree. I mean, I guess the mass Julie had on her back as we're like trying to go uphill. Before you get things going and they're sort of moving on their own, which I think now we're catching some stride. And it's totally because of how awesome she is. And she doesn't get any credit, but like her work ethic and her like abilities are bananas, right? Yours were too. And I'm sorry that you're not with us, but like you're like a Nova. So you really got to be out there. And so our centers, like you're definitely a piece of, and you're welcome anytime to do your thing. You could do exercise, you could teach resilience, but yeah, totally. I mean, I think that fixed mindset, growth mindset was also something I remember doing training when you said, like, your understanding of things are so great because you just capsulate it. Like, I like this. This reframes failures as opportunities, which is perfect. It's something you naturally do. Let me ask you, since you're the interviewee and I'm talking all the time, what would you say to somebody who was, I guess, maybe early in recovery or thinking about it, that is having trouble with sort of the fitting in the mold thing? Like, I know be brave. I know you're going to say it, but like think of something else.
No, I love that topic. It can be controversial. So here I go.
Dude, we're all about that. Not really. No, we are.
I think there's a lot of pressure in different recovery communities that there's some sort of a mold of like what recovery looks like. And I think that if there's a newcomer or someone thinking about recovery and not sure, does that fit for me? I think my challenge back to that person would be how do you define recovery? Like what is that to you? Because how I define it, and there's lots of different ways, but it's how are we going to live a life that gets us in a place where we're really fulfilled and not just happy, like I'm smiling and laughing a lot, but I mean at a deep level, we're centered. For those that have a higher power or some concept, we're like connected to something bigger than self. We're really at peace. We're free internally. And so there's so many different pathways to get there. And I think oftentimes it can be so daunting. I remember early stage recovery. I remember getting my 90-day chip and someone was getting their 1-year chip, and they, I'm 16, they were like 18. And I'm like, how have you done this for a year? Like, what have you done on Saturday nights? Like, I don't get it. This seems like such a drag. But when I started to see recovery as so much more than sobriety is this, when we think about it as sobriety, it's you're taking something away. I now don't get to go and use, right? When we think about it as recovery, it's like, how do I get to be the most fulfilled, biggest, wisest, happiest, most thriving, to use your words, flourishing version of myself? If that's how we define recovery, then all of a sudden the pathway to get there, it's like, well, what about that is limiting? That's so freeing, and in the decades that I've been sober now, I've had tons of times where I have thought to myself and wondered and questioned and had different like phases of craving or different phases where that part of my brain that exists still goes, oh, what would be really cool? A lot of vodka, And each time I get to kind of sit back and really ask myself and go, but wait, like, what would that do versus what would I be giving up? So I think the orientation that you guys bring to this world, which is that recovery is so much about figuring out how to flourish and how to thrive. If we can look at it that way, then there's nothing intimidating inherently about it. It's just you being the best version of you, not taking anything away, just adding to what's already inside of you.
Well said, dude.
For sure. And what I've noticed with that, those exact words that you just said, finding the best version of yourself, and I'm sorry, I didn't just quote you. That's what you bring when you go into these large organizations. It's finding what works and finding what's best within these organizations. So it's so transferable for you that's why you're so amazing at what you do. It's just part of who you are.
In starting my company, which is working in a separate space, it really is just another manifestation of the same purpose I had when I went to school to become a social worker. And when I partnered and worked for and with both of you in the recovery world, it's that same thing of like, how do we help promote the best overall outcomes by helping people be the best version of themselves? I'm just like, gosh, if I can do that with CEOs and their teams, then there's a lot of ripple effects. That sounds cool. But it's really, at its core, it's still just a social worker out there trying to help.
What's been the most surprising gift or epiphany in your recovery, in your journey?
The most surprising gift or epiphany?
Starting with the letter S. I'm joking about that.
I was like, wait, I'm good with words. You want me to wordsmith this live? Okay. Like a rapper here. You know what? Epiphany, actually, I'm connecting more with epiphany right now over gift. Epiphany, and I guess it's a gift in some ways, but I've been through some really hard times in recovery because that's life. And like really painful, yucky, bad things have happened, but they're never all bad or all good. And so the epiphany is like that ability to remove myself from my reactions and like take that distance and do so with really open eyes, which is what recovery, open eyes, open heart, that's what recovery allows, so that I can eventually get the good that comes out of any bad, quote unquote, I can get the positive that come out of any difficult situation. The hallmark example I think about with this, not for me, but just from my life, my grandfather, short version, was a freedom fighter in World War II. His 80% of our family was murdered by the Nazis. That part of my family is Jewish. And he made it out by the skin of his teeth and lived in the mountains fighting Nazis for 2 years. And his wife and baby were all this, terrible, terrible stuff. And had all that terrible, terrible stuff not happened, he would not have moved back to this little town, Tonon-les-Bains in France after the war, where he then looked for his wife and baby for a year before giving up, and then met my grandmother, who then had my father in France. And then lo and behold, I exist years later. Not to say that my existence justifies the Holocaust, but there are all of these spin-out things that we can't see, And so when I've lost people that I love, when tough things have happened, recovery has allowed me to, in the moment, and especially longer term, have that distance and that perspective and that willingness to be grateful and look for the good, even in the really tough times. So that is a gift. I said it wasn't a gift. That's totally a gift and an epiphany.
Okay, cool. Julie, do you have anything? I want to I want to because the Black Lives Matter movement right now is so big. I remember a story that you told that I wish was you at your best, because it's you at your second best. And I wonder if you could share it, because you're one of the only other people I know that took the implicit bias test and did okay, like me. But a fear you had when you were a kid, you watched your dad get beat up, was that you were racist. And I love that. I just love that. Could you mind sharing that?
Sure. Thank you for reminding me. I was like, oh gosh, where is this going?
I know. I do that. I do that to all the guests. I try to catch.
No, it's good. It's good. Keep me on my toes. So that story, my father was into not competitive tennis, but recreational league tennis. And my dad is 6'2". He wears these big aviator sunglasses. He has an afro. He's quite a character. Big dark aviator sunglasses. And he's in the championship match, which is him playing this woman and just me in the corner with my goldfish and my coloring book at 6 years old watching. So it's not really a big deal. But in tennis, for those that don't know, you spend most of the match kind of turned to the side, because that's how you swing. That's how you hit the ball. Meaning if there's a court next to you on the side that you're turned towards those people. So he's playing the match, whatever. Partway through the match, the player that was on the court next to him comes over. And to my memory, this man is towering over my 6'2", 6'3", probably with his afro father. And he starts screaming at my dad. And he accuses my dad. He says, why do you keep looking at me? And when you look at me, why do you keep smiling at me? And my dad is just kind of, backing up and saying, whoa, don't know where this is coming from, kind of thing. And this man takes his tennis racket and swings full up over his head, clobbers my dad in the head with his racket. And my dad, my hero, crumples to the ground. He's laying on the ground on this tennis court, and I'm screaming and crying, and people are calling the cops, and the other man's girlfriend is pulling him off, and they're peeling out in their car. And it was really traumatic. He ended up having burst blood vessels in his head, having to spend a night in the hospital. It was really traumatic to watch. This man, the clobberer with the tennis racket, happened to be a tall, dark-skinned, shaved-headed Black man. Some weeks or months, whatever it is later, I'm with my dad. We're at a frozen yogurt shop, and I'm playing tag with my friends on the street. And I run down to the end of the street, and walking up sort of from the corner towards me is a tall, dark-skinned, shaved-headed Black man. And I run back into the yogurt shop, and I run into my dad's arms, and I'm crying. And he says, why are you crying? And I said, Daddy, I just saw a tall, dark-skinned, shaved-headed Black man walking up the street towards me, and I got really scared. And I think that makes me a racist, and I don't want to be a racist. So I'm this little kid having this natural trauma reaction just to a stimulus and not wanting to be racist. I was raised in Berkeley, California, for what it's worth. That was drilled into us very young. And we've learned a lot more about that now. I won't go into the Black Lives Matter movement. It's not appropriate for this podcast, but we know a lot more about where bias comes from and all that. But that was that experience just as a little kid, really not wanting to identify with hatred and bias.
Yeah, no, I'm totally bringing up the subject because I think it's pertinent in that I see it on TV, but I don't hear anybody talking about it out there. And my son plays a lot of basketball. And so that's a very much Black dominated sport. And we went to one tournament and everybody was wearing all of the Black parents, not all, I'd say 90% of the Black parents were wearing Black Lives Matter in some form or another on their mask, and no white people were wearing it. And so I went and bought one, and okay, I could do that and I could donate money, but I don't know if it's just that I'm white or maybe I'm in a small world, but what else can we do? There's no discussion about it in it's just one of those things that I want to be more front and center, but I'm sort of afraid to broach it. Kind of like addiction's a big deal with a lot of shame and people don't talk about it. And I think that it's great that the athletes are making it a big deal. I watch a lot of sports, but that seems to be the only interface I have with it. So what do you know, you travel a lot, you talk to way more people than me. So what is it? What else can I do? Or what else can happen?
Yeah. I mean, one, I think it starts with a really personal journey to understanding there's tons of obviously literature and trainings, but how to be an anti-racist is a sort of sentinel text. There's one that I'm reading right now. Actually, I have it right here. It's called How Good People Fight Bias, The Person You Mean to Be. It's by Dolly Chu. That's spelled Chugh. This book is awesome because it's a really personal journey through we all have bias, and the whole we don't see color thing, that doesn't exist. Right. We do see it and we do have bias, and all of us sometimes don't act like that really good person that most of us really want to be. And so I would say the first step is just that internal journey and just looking at it and being willing to recognize places that we fall short of our own ideals. But the second thing I would say is that as folks that are running a successful company, that is a position of power. And so a lot of our clients have come to us in the wake of all of this to say, ask that exact same question. How do we use our power well? And whether it's in what type of content you're promoting on your social feeds or how you're looking at your own hiring and recruiting practices, that's a big one. We can't promote equity if we don't have people represented at our table. So how can you get more representation at your personal table, so to speak, as a business, but perhaps leveraging that platform. And I'm happy to share out resources and stuff, what people are doing that seems to be helping.
Yeah.
So the one insight I will share from this book that I really love, she talks about when it comes to fighting bias, like being a part of the solution. She says, it's not about solving, it's about grappling. So like we have this idea that we're going to somehow do something that solves it, not about fixing, not about solving. It's about growth and humility and grappling and just being willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. So bringing it up right now, that's awesome. Just having the chat.
This reminds me of hanging out with you before we would do the trainings, because this is the shit we would talk about.
Right.
That one Casa de Amigos or whatever the hell place it is in Austin.
Casa de Luz. Yeah.
The hippie colony.
Yes, they're doing well, by the way, during COVID. They're doing very well.
We would eat there and I'd be hungry 10 minutes later because it was all bird food.
Bunch of steamed vegetables.
Look, that was great advice. And Julie, one of her strengths as a leader is the inclusion factor. Mm-hmm. And I know she's going to take and run with it. I don't really think that is an area we lack in at every level, but you never know. You never know. So, man, thank you. Julie, got anything we could roll into the PI?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ilana, for sharing that resource. I do think it's really helpful for our listeners to have it, and I appreciate you sharing that for sure.
For sure.
So we are going to jump into our positive intervention for today. It starts with a quote by Theodore Roosevelt, and it is, "Let us remember that as much has been given us, much will be expected from us. And that true homage comes from the heart as well as from the lips and shows itself in deeds." An addict's loved ones have often heard grand promises about that addict's plan to change, only to repeatedly let down. Recovery gives addicts the priceless opportunity to make good on those promises and earn back the trust of loved ones. That said, no one should listen to words as much as they see actions. Addicts are measured by what they do more than most. And this is for good reason. Actions make us who we are. Once realized, this concept is both freeing and frightening. It means people can be whomever they want based on how they choose to act. The amends addicts make in recovery are often ritualized. They make lists of what they have done wrong and engage in purposeful actions to try to make each transgression right. However, what about those cases where direct action to address the offense is not a viable option? How then are addicts to rectify their wrongs and clean their slates as they begin lives anew in recovery? In these cases, and in a generalized sense, make a living amends. Live the best way possible to show you are both sorry for past wrongdoings and grateful for the chance to do it better this time. Gratitude helps you maintain focus while making these living amends. When experiencing gratitude for the second chance recovery offers, you can more easily live according to your highest virtues and ideals, develop character, and forge a legacy. So the positive intervention associated with that reading was that we were to make yourself a living amends in what you do, think, and say. See each choice and moment of your day as an opportunity to engage with the world in the best possible way, in alignment with the values and ideals you hold dear in your recovery. Dig deep here. Ask yourself if there is anything you can either do more or less of to be your best self all day. So I love this positive intervention, and it feels like I feel like Ilana might have wrote this one. I know she helped you because she lives every day that way. And so I imagine, or at least in my opinion, she just scrunched up her nose for our listeners. But in my mind, that is Ilana. So could you share what you felt when you kind of went through that positive intervention?
Yeah, it was fun to dive back into it and feel those words. And I was actually, after I read it, I was describing it to my husband. He's not in recovery. And I said, you know, a living amends. And he was like, what do you mean by that? And so we sort of had this dialogue last night about what is a living amends? You know, what does that mean? And my husband is religious. We're very different spiritual creatures in that way, but he's religious. And for him, it's kind of like that, what would Jesus do kind of thing? Like, how can you just be the best version of yourself? But what I like about the living amends piece and how I sort of take it in for myself, there are these certain things that will come up where it's like, ooh, I know I stepped in that last time, you know? And I don't just mean stuff from back when I was using. Most of that, I mean, it's a long ways back now for me. I don't have much to clean up. I have done a lot of work to clean that stuff up, but stuff will come up where it will trigger in me this recognition that, ooh, last time I was walking around this topic, I really stepped in it and I didn't like how I did it. Let me really focus on what could I learn and how can I live in a way that shows gratitude and humility for that past lesson. The one that came up recently that the listeners may be able to relate to a bit. I lost a friend to this disease. She was one of my closest friends when I was in my using days. And I lost her over a decade ago. She died as a direct result of this disease. Actually, just side note, trying to self-detox without any help. And it kicked her body into something the body couldn't sustain. So please, 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 if you're detoxing, like consult with your medical professionals. But that was a long time ago. Now that I think about it, it's probably 13 years ago that she passed away. And I had known her brother fairly well, her older brother. And I remember reaching out to him. We've been out of touch for years. And I reached out to him on Facebook and I made one of those grief response errors where I learned about how to appropriately sort of manage the grief response. Think about it like a target, like concentric circles where there's the little one in the middle and then one on the outside and outside, moving out and out and out. And when you're evaluating, how do I respond? Who do I go to for support in grieving this loss? You want to think about what circle you're in. So the person who's been lost has some inner circle people. It's probably, if they're married, their spouse, maybe their children, maybe a best friend, or if they're younger, it's their parents. Even if they're older, it might be their parents. It's those people that are in the very inner circle. And then one layer out might be their really close friends, depending on who they are. Maybe their siblings are in there, or maybe they're in the inner one. You know, then you move out, maybe their cousins and aunts and uncles are in the next one, and their neighbors are in the one after that, and their coworkers are in the one after that, and you're moving out and out. And when we're evaluating our grief response, what I've been taught is think about what circle you're in. And if you're in a circle that's farther out than the other person, you don't get to talk about your grief. You ask how you can support them in theirs. You can share about it. You can relate to them and be empathetic, but you don't go to them for support. So if my best friend just lost her mom and it's bringing up stuff for me about losing my mom, I don't go to that best friend to say, hey, I really need you to help me with like how I'm feeling about having lost my mom since you just lost your mom. I go to someone else. And when I go to her, I say, I can really relate to you. I love you. I'm so sorry for your loss. You know, how can I be here for you? That kind of
I love that.
Yeah, it's helped me so much. But I didn't know that when I lost this friend years ago. And so I went to the brother and I made that cardinal error of sort of processing my own stuff with him. And he reacted very strongly. And that's okay. Every right to. And I've always regretted it. And unfortunately, I lost another person just a couple weeks ago. Young person died as a result of this disease as well. And it immediately triggered that past learning. And my response to her family and her friends had nothing to do with me aside from empathizing and being in the pain, you know, loving her with them, but nothing to do with me. So long story, but that's like a living amends to me. It's like, let me actively learn and acknowledge where I've messed up before and then actively don't do it again. It's okay to make a mistake. It's not okay to not learn from it. Same messages at the beginning.
Did you do anything? Did you have a day where you were sort of like doing the living amends? And I ask, because I'll share mine, that The way I saw this was living amends always resonated with me because it was like, I had lost the ability to say, I'm sorry. I said it so many times in my disease, like when addiction was active, you know, I'd get caught or I'd do something and I'd say, I'm sorry. So I just learned that, okay, that phrase is like not something I can own anymore. I just need to show it. And a lot of that was around Amy because, you know, my wife, Amy, we were separated at the time. And I just was told like, all you can do is show it. And like, I did. And so with that in mind, and this feels a little bit, maybe, I want to say sneaky just because like, you know, you'll hear what I did. nobody knew I had an agenda, but I had an agenda. Like, how do I kind of just be the best version of myself around her? What would Jesus do in this situation, basically, right? I'm not pretty sure he wouldn't do this, but because he wouldn't be married, right? It's like really tough. There's limitations to that litmus, right? That standard won't work in marriage. He would, like, unless you count Mary Magdalene. But I digress. Let's focus, Jason. So her father's living with us now. He's advanced age, has advanced Parkinson's, and she was talking to him about something, and I interrupted him, and I was like, "Look, Ted, I just want to thank you for living with us. It has been such a gift because, raising kids is hard. My wife gives, but with kids, just kind of, a lot of times they're just sort of, they take you for granted, whatever. But watching how much she gives to you and that you appreciate it kind of makes it easy. It's like, I love her 10,000 times more than I would have if you didn't come. Because I know at some level, he's thinking, is he a burden? So I was like, okay, hey, that's the best thing I could possibly say in this situation. But and it felt sincere, and it also the fact I'm sharing it now, she'll listen to it like, you had an agenda. So brownie points removed, but that's okay.
Well, and if the agenda at the end of the day is to be the best person you can be, the best version of you, and to help, to be a positive impact on those around you, if that's the agenda and therefore they end up feeling better about you too, I'm good with that. Like that,
That's so awesome that you said that, because I was listening to that story and I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, yeah, but how did that make them feel? And what contribution did you have to their day, to how they felt and where they went with that? So that's pretty cool, I think.
Totally. Yeah.
Ilana, it's been so great having you on. I just have enjoyed being with you today, and it's always good to be around you. I always feel better when I leave your presence.
Same to you, Julie. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the section of the podcast. Like I said, we're going to hit you up with some pearls. And specifically, we're going to talk about the 24 universal character strengths. Now, we want to make sure that each of you have the link where you can take that via the survey on that will tell you exactly how your 24 universal character strengths rank within you and Julie, what's the name of that link?
It is at viacharacter.org, V as in Victor, IA, character.org. It's a free test that you can take, and they'll email you your results right to your email. You don't have to do anything to be able to take the test. Just go on and do it. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes max.
And so we're going to highlight one character strength and kind of give you suggestions on how to use it and go over what is underuse and overuse. And hopefully this will be helpful. And we'd love to hear from you if you think it is or anything we could do better. Basically, the backbone of PERMA, or positivity, engagement, relationship, meaning, and achievement, is the character strengths. When you know your character strengths, which is something that happens when you take the VIA, when you act on them, and it gives you more positive emotion, it gives you more engagement, better relationships, gives you more meaning, and it gives you more accomplishment. So it sort of works both ways, right? There's 24 character strengths. Like, we all have these in different combinations that are unique to us, and they're important for us as how we flourish as individuals. The set of the 24 strengths comes from the research of Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania and the late Dr. Chris Peterson at the University of Michigan, and a slew of other researchers. It took them 3 years looking at 100 strengths and then whittling those down to 24 universal ones that every parent wanted for their child, and that when you displayed them, you weren't diminished, but you were like brought up. And they had 11 criteria. I'm not going to go over each of these now, but we're going to highlight one now called curiosity, which is, interest or novelty seeking, openness to experience. Curiosity is taking an interest in all of ongoing experience. It involves actively recognizing and pursuing challenging opportunities and seeking out new knowledge. It's curiosity can be broken down into 3 categories, like interest, novelty seeking, and openness to new experience. And it's this strength that drives individuals to make discoveries and to explore the boundaries of human knowledge. One of Ilana, our guest this week, one of her top character strengths is curiosity. She's like always wanting to meet new people and do things. And, she doesn't overuse it. Like, if you overuse curiosity, you're like a paparazzi, or you're like, just kind of like in their face, asking maybe too many questions and like crossing certain boundaries. And underuse of curiosity is...
Can I interrupt you for a second? Because I sometimes want to know, like, what happens if someone's overusing a character strength? Like, how can you guide someone to maybe rein it in or pull it back in a little bit?
Okay, that's awesome. So when teams that work together know each other's strengths, they see things like that in a different way. So if one of your coworkers you judge to be like really nosy, but now if you kind of understand the world of strengths, you kind of say, well, so they're overusing the strength of curiosity in this situation. And if that other person knows about character strengths, if you understand the overuse and underuse, it's not so much a shaming thing. Of course, the relationship has to be on a ground where you can have that type of conversation, because you can use it just like you use any judgment. Like, you're overusing curiosity when they might not be, and they might take it just as severely. So like, if you don't know you're doing it, you don't know you're doing it. It's a blind spot. If somebody like that you trust brings it to your attention, I would guess, like anything, if you can hear it, then you can rein it back a little bit. And I think it takes a little bit of social intelligence to know when other people have cues that, like, okay, they're shutting down. It's time to maybe have some distance. Or like Ilana said, you can use certain guides. Like, it's not for me to bring a set of problems if my emotional involvement is, way less than somebody else's. Like, that's really kind of too selfish, right? That's just not something that you want to like impose on someone else. I hope I'm answering your question. I think I know you so well, you know me so well. We could have that conversation with each other.
Sure. No, you definitely answered it. I was, for our listeners who, once they take the character strength and it spits out, people will immediately say, oh yeah, this is me. This is me. Oh, I don't use this one so much. Oh, I want to know how to use this one more, or maybe I'm overusing this. Like, for our listeners, a lot of family members tend to overutilize love. And I know we're talking about curiosity, but I just want to say that that's an easy one that a lot of people can overutilize. When curiosity is underutilized, what do we wind up with then?
Sure. So can you imagine like not being curious at all, and somebody is talking to you and you don't have any follow-up questions? You're just sort of like detached, right? You couldn't give a shit, and it makes you seem aloof. Withdrawn is really like the underuse. So those are the kind of like descriptions of what it's like to not use it at all. And if you don't engage in the world around you, you don't learn anything, right? And so curiosity is one of those things that all children are born curious. We're just like so curious. And it's one of those traits that like kind of like creativity maybe gets a little bit whittled down because we get afraid. We learn, okay, these are the roles we play, and like I don't want to make mistakes, and there's all these other things. But curiosity in the right amount is great. It helps us learn. It helps us take in new information. It helps us explore. There are things that you can do, like trying something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable every day. That takes bravery. Maybe love of learning could be a strength to come into play, where you learn something new, right? You get a new skill. You can get more engaged physically in different types of things like dance. Right? You get curious on like how things work, maybe, take a workshop. What would you do to exercise your curiosity?
When I am really kind of focusing on curiosity as a strength, and it's not like I walk around every day like, oh, today I'm going to focus on curiosity. Things just start coming up. But I do recognize immediately that when I utilize my strengths in the right amounts, particularly curiosity, it really does help build relationships. You mentioned that earlier. Because truth be told, as human beings, we like to share about ourselves. And so if I'm very interested in another person and ask follow-up questions, I get to know somebody better. I get to establish a better relationship with them, and they feel more cared about. So I often spend time getting curious about what people are telling me, and then about what's going on in my environment. So that on a relationship way, that's how I definitely use it. And then about being curious, like I have no trouble going anywhere. Like I'm like, yeah, like let's go. Sure, why not? I might have trouble getting there by way of GPS or finding my way there because, as you know, Dr. Powers, I have
anti-GPS. If Ilana's GPS, you are anti-GPS.
Correct. I get lost everywhere I go. But I love it because I find new things. Like one time, Dr. Powers and I were in Taos, New Mexico, and we found these Earth ships because I went the wrong way. And that was
wicked.
Yeah, we would have never seen them. And because I passed them that day later, because I was curious about what goes on at those Earth ships and what's that community like, I went back and they have tours and all kinds of stuff. And so I like to utilize curiosity to learn more, which kind of feeds into some other character strengths. And I know that curiosity is one that's up there for me. So.
Well, awesome. Well, I hope this works. All right. Now this is Powers and Denova actually signing off.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4-SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.